Hey guys, what's happening? JC with Big Game Real Estate. Today we're going to talk about picking your investment strategy. One of the biggest issues I see with new people in the business is they don't know what their investment strategy is, and you guys tend to want to try to do all of them at the same time. Now, that doesn't work, at least when you're getting started. Now, I'm not saying you can't have more than one strategy, but pick a track first unless you're just gophering a deal for one of your investors. So, investment strategies, I would say, fall under there's two different tracks here. Number one is the asset class. The asset class is really up to you, okay? And we can change a little bit of the asset class, but that's retail, residential, industrial, multifamily office. Whichever one you prefer, fine. But what I'm really talking about is what your strategy is, meaning, are you a cap rate investor? Are you a value add investor? Are you a 1031 exchange investor? Are you long term or are you short term? So I'm going to try to help you pick the best strategy for you. And for you guys, it's going to be value add. All right, but I want to review the other terms so you know and so you understand why these may not be the best choices for you. So let's take a term that we hear all the time. It's cap rate. What is it? What does it mean? Well, in layman's terms, the cap rate essentially is the rate of return you're receiving on a property, right? So if we see a building, we hear it all the time, 8% cap. What's the cap on that building? The cap rate is, okay, let's say 8%. That means it's 8% on your money. Now that's assuming that you have purchased the building in its entirety, right? Because when we are talking about a cap rate, we're not talking about the debt. So that's assuming, hey, if this property is $100 and I spent $100 on this, my cap rate would be 8%. A true cap rate is minus all of the expenses, but not the debt, okay? So most of you who are getting into the business, unless you're starting with a big nest egg, this is not the deal for you. And the reason for that is, even though, well, first of all, right now interest rates are around that 8 or 9%. So you would have to be making almost a 12% cap rate in many cases to make it worth it for you. Why? Well, let's look at it this way. Easy way to do it is this. If you have to borrow money at 6% and the cap rate is 5, you're losing a percentage of money on your money, right? Because you would have to earn at least that percentage if the mortgage and the financing and lending is 6%. Now, if the income is 6% cap rate or 7% cap rate, and you're able to get 5 or 6% on your financing, you're still probably not turning enough profit as a newbie in the business, right? You're going to have things that go wrong with the building. You may have some vacancy that's involved. So cap rate deals are usually stabilized assets, okay? Someone else has already gone in there and owned it for a substantial period of time, or maybe done the work to bring it up to a cap rate deal if they were a value add guy like you are now, and now they're trying to sell it for the income, the market rate. Again, it's good to know a lot of the folks that you may be teaming up with, as we speak about in other videos and spoken about, will be cap rate investors. But for you guys getting into business, even if you're making a little bit of money, with putting 25 and 30% down to acquire the property, you're not going to have any money left over to get into more property. Again, if you're getting someone else to buy it, using their money, that's a different story. All right, value add investors. Value add is this. There's a property that has essentially value we can add. Now, what does that mean? That could mean a rundown building or a rundown site. That could mean lease terms maybe are about to expire, right? So maybe there's only a couple months or a year or two left on the tenant's lease terms, and we're able to get it at a discount because maybe the owner just wants to sell. We're not going to pay the actual cap rate. We're going to pay less because the lease is expiring. It could be, again, a building that needs work, a property that needs work. It could be some lagging tenants. Maybe there's some mom and pop tenants in there that haven't been doing well, and you're citing the property and you may say, hey, this would work great for you know, a Burger King. This would work great for a Home Depot. This would work great for, you know, a Hand and Stone. So again, if you can take the same building, you may have to make some do some upkeep to the property, fix the parking lot. You may have to modify the spaces, but again, you have an existing building. All right, your tenant's lagging. The building needs maintenance, and you're able to go in there and do some improvements. Okay, which can be as little as just re-tenanting the building and, you know, some aesthetics, to obviously full-blown renovations, but that's value add. That's going to be where you guys are going to make your most bang for your buck, right? I'm getting a property for 50. I'm going to put 25 in. I'm going to sell it for 150. That's essentially the concept. Some other terms you're going to hear. Now, repositioning, okay? Repositioning and value add, very similar, but the pay timeout is a little bit different, right? If I purchase a building and I'm a value add investor, I can purchase the building today. I can go acquire a tenant tomorrow. And the second that lease is signed, I can go back to the bank and I can cash out refinance, okay? So how does that differ from repositioning? Well, it doesn't always have to, right? Because if I have a building, let's say, and I go in and I get a gas convenience guy or something like that, the same rules would apply. Once they sign the lease, okay, I can also go back to the bank and cash out refinance. So that if that's a vacant piece of land, or if it's a building that needs some tear down. Again, if it's a building that needs tear down, you may have delivery conditions. You may have to do some work, okay, in order to deliver the site pad ready or acceptable to the tenant. That will cost some money, but again, you were able to go back to the bank the second that lease is signed. Value add, okay, usually you're just re-tenanting the building and doing improvements. It's a shorter timeline, so you're making your money back quicker. When you're repositioning a property, unless you have a tenant in line, oftentimes repositioning means I have a rundown, let's say, warehouse building. I'm going to then convert it into multifamily, right? So I'm going to reposition the property. And usually the new owner, being you, would go through the approval process, which, depending on what state you're in, could take 6 months, could take a year or 18 months. So that's the only reason why I say repositioning may be a much longer timeline. Again, it doesn't always need to. 1031 investor. So a 1031 investor, again, if you're a 1031 investor, it's good to know the term. We'll get into 1031s in another video. A 1031 investor is someone who has a building that they are selling or has sold, okay? They have a certain amount of time to identify a new property and defer their taxes. So if they earned $500,000, rather than paying Uncle Sam half of that, they can roll that into a new property, get a larger property that's making more income. We're gonna do a whole video on 1031, so don't worry about that. But again, that assumes you had a building and you sold it, okay? And what is a cash out refi? How does that work? How much can you take? We are gonna do a whole other video on that so you guys are aware. That's where you're making your big bucks. Your cash out, once you have that value add property, okay, you're gonna go back to the bank, you're gonna cash out refinance, okay, and you're gonna put a lot of money into your pocket, right? If I bought the property for $1 million, it had a few mom and pop tenants, now I'm getting Wawa, now I'm getting Johnson & Johnson if it's an office building, I'm getting a big corporate signature, I'm getting Walmart, maybe it was a piece of land. Okay, that property now goes from $1 million, could be worth 10 million, right? So if I bought it for $1 million cash, just using that as an example, now it's worth 10 million. I could probably take up to 75% of that money. So now I can take 7.5 total debt. So I'm putting 6.5 back in my pocket. I'm putting 7.5 total, and I could go buy another property. And if I'm putting 25% down, I have 7.5 million. I could buy, an almost a $30 million property and receive the rent roll from that, as long as this building that I purchased is cash flow positive, right? All right, so there's a lot of cool tricks, guys, but the most important thing is know what your investment strategy is. When someone asks you what type of investor you are, hey, I'm a value add investor. Okay, I'm looking for deals. I'm looking to reposition a property. I'm looking to make renovations. I'm looking to improve the property. I'm looking to re-tenant the property. That's who I am. If you're looking for deals for someone else, you have to know what kind of investor are they. Because if they're a cap rate, A paper investor, don't bring them a value add. And if they're a value add guy, don't bring them a cap rate. You'll lose your contact or you'll at least put it in jeopardy. All right, guys, JC, Big Game Real Estate. See you on the next one.